I also want to call your attention, if you are in recovery, there are images of drugs and drug use in this presentation that can be triggers. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that. Okay. And for those joining us online, embedded in the description is a link to the SurveyMonkey survey. We'll appreciate if they could take the survey after the presentation today, and it's really short, about 15 questions. Okay, so in today's presentation, we're going to cover everything from the basics to the most current information, because I want you to walk away from here today feeling like you know a lot about this topic. Some of us in the room have never used it, never seen it, don't know much about it, and others have much more experience through, maybe it's personal experience or through their jobs. There'll be time at the end for questions, so please hold your questions because it might be covered during the presentation. Okay, so marijuana has been around for a very long time. When you talk to somebody who smoked in the 60s or 70s, they probably tell you that marijuana isn't that hard a drug. So what's the big deal about marijuana? What do you guys think is the big deal about marijuana? It's been called a gateway drug because many users of hard drugs say they started with marijuana. What else? What else do you think? Okay, well, we sure are hearing a lot about it in the news. So besides the fact that 23 states and the District of Columbia have voted to approve medical marijuana, even though it remains a Schedule I illegal substance under federal law. So Schedule I means that it is, I'm losing my words here. Okay, so it is not, it has no medicinal purpose, and that it has high potential for abuse. Okay, and also the fact that Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska have voted to legalize marijuana for recreational use, and 14 states and the District of Columbia have decriminalized first-time possession of a small amount of the drug. So why is there so much concern if it's not a big deal? A not well-known fact is that the marijuana today is very different than the marijuana of 20, 30, and 40 years ago. So let's start by taking a look at that. Okay, we're going to start here. What is marijuana? So marijuana is the dried leaves, flowers, stems, and seeds from the hemp plant, Cannabis sativa. It contains THC, which is the psychoactive chemical that causes you to feel high, as well as other compounds. There's also cannabis indica. It has poor fiber quality, so it's not used for hemp. It is used for recreational drugs. Okay. So, marijuana has many street names. Here are just a few. Take a look, and who knows some that are not on this screen? Yell them out. Debbie's going to start writing them down.
Mary Jane.
Yeah. What else have you heard it called?
I've heard it referred to as a blunt.
Blunt? Hmm? Who else?
Doobie.
Good one. Okay, we're going to stop Debbie writing there because some other common names that I found were AstroTurf, Aunt Mary, Bomber, Boom, Chiva, Fatty, Bravo, KJ, Dank, Chino, Mr. J, Schwag, I like saying that one, Schwag, Shake, and Wacky Tobacco. But as a matter of fact, there's over 200 common names for marijuana. So we could be up here at the board writing for a very long time. Some more recently added are dab, shatter, and wax. We'll be looking at those more in depth a little later in the presentation. Okay, so what does marijuana look like and how is it used? So the most common form is the plant. So there you see a plant and its leaves and its buds. Those are actually the flowers of the plant. Here's a bud that is not dried, and this is what it looks like when it is dried. Okay, and in the dried form, it is most commonly smoked in a joint, although some people empty out a cigar wrapper, and that's called a blunt. We heard that term. It can be smoked in a pipe, and these are just some common pipes. These are hand-blown glass. That one's made out of metal. Pipes can come in many different styles, designs, colors. I just wanted to, give you the basic rundown of what they look like, but sometimes they don't even resemble pipes. It's also commonly smoked out of a bong. But dried marijuana can also be ingested, eaten, or brewed into a tea. You commonly hear of it in pot brownies, cakes, and cookies. So some people wonder, what does marijuana smell like? We have an example of that. So I'll have two containers going around the room. Now, I obtained these containers from a person who has a medical marijuana card, and she offered me another container. She says, "This one smells like fruit," and I said, I'm looking for just the basic smell. That way, people know, how to recognize it if they smell it. Well, later on, I got a little more curious about fruity smelling marijuana. I really had never heard of that. So I went online at a medical marijuana website, and sure enough discovered that there are many strains of marijuana that smell like food that they are distributing. Just a quick look, because there were pages and pages of different kinds, turned up banana, blueberry, grape, cherry soda, champagne, and cheese. Again, just to name a few. I also noticed that these flavors were not sprayed on. They actually grow the plant. I don't know how they do that, but they grow the plant to where it's part of the plant. So, okay. So now that we've looked at marijuana, well, we're looking at the plant form. Let's move on to how potent is today's marijuana. So in the 80s, I did smoke marijuana as a teen. I'm happy to say that I just celebrated 26 years clean and sober. Woohoo! Yay! I say this because back in the 80s, when it was 3% on the average THC, I remember how it made me feel. When you have a cold and you take NyQuil, and about an hour or so after taking the medicine, your head feels all fuzzy and you just can't get a thought through, and you're kind of, you're not feeling real coordinated. And well, marijuana kind of makes you feel like that times 5, and that was for me back at 3%. And the effects of marijuana are almost instantaneous, depending on the method that you ingest it. Well, nowadays, we're looking at an average of 12.3% THC. That was recorded by the University of Mississippi's Potency Monitoring Program in 2012. Scientists at that lab also saw samples as high as 36%. In April 2014, High Times magazine analyzed 15 strains of pot with potencies ranging between 25 to 28% THC, and stated that marijuana near that strength can be bought at many local retail shops and medical dispensaries across the U.S. Now, increasing the potency of the THC in marijuana plants was also shown to increase the intensity of the effects. In a few slides, we're going to be talking about those effects that are increased. And at this point, we're just talking about the potency level of the plant marijuana. But marijuana comes in many other forms with higher potencies. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Oh, Tammy, would you please turn the lights? I want to turn the lights out so that you guys can see the detail in this slide here. Go ahead and take that in for a minute. Okay, somebody tell me, as you look at this slide, what's going through your mind?
Kids.
Kids. Dangerous to kids. Yes, it is. These products are very attractive to kids. Now, there's several other products out there. They are, just made into almost anything you can imagine. There's chips, there's pretzels, there's Rice Krispie treats. These are just a few pictures that I pulled in off the internet. But if you can imagine, kids either who can't read yet or younger children that wouldn't stop to read a label, or maybe some labels that aren't very clear. Take these marijuana-infused sodas. The only thing that we can see that tells you there's marijuana in it is this marijuana leaf. And a child may not understand that. They'll see, root beer, orange cream. That's very enticing to them. Okay, an article in the Denver Post on May 21st, 2014 stated that the number of children coming into Colorado's largest pediatric emergency department after accidentally eating marijuana at that time, so at half the year, was on pace to more than double the year before's total, and that most of the cases involved accidental ingestion of edibles. A recent article by drugfreeazkids.org stated that in the 2014 Monitoring the Future survey, 12th graders who lived in medical marijuana states said that 40% of them said they had used marijuana in the form of edibles. And the seniors who did not live, who lived in non-medical marijuana states, 26% of them still had consumed it as an edible. So these edibles use the concentrated oil from marijuana, and that's at a high potency, higher than the plant itself. And so that in itself is a danger to our youth. Yes.
Now, when you say consumption, is that without them knowing, like an accidental consumption?
The emergency room, okay. The emergency room stats said accidental ingestion. Okay. Yes.
Are these products then sold like just online, or how do you access those? Do I don't see that at the grocery store?
No, they're sold in dispensary. In Arizona, we are a medical marijuana state, so they're sold in the dispensaries. In Colorado, though, I don't think they've hit grocery stores, but they're still they're in shops there. Yeah. Well, besides the high THC content, often these products contain multiple servings. So we're going to take a look at this product here, the 420 bar. So one 420 chocolate bar contains 6 servings. Okay, total of 180 milligrams of THC in the entire chocolate bar, and it even has a warning here. It says consumption advice: before you know the effects of this product, eat only half a segment and wait a minimum of 75 minutes before consuming another portion. So this is an issue for our youth because they're not going to stop to read the warnings. And of course, it's candy, so they're going to eat the whole thing. That's scary. It's not just been an issue for youth. There have been several adults ending up in the emergency departments because of overconsumption. A lot of it accidental. Yes?
I just have a question, just backing up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The 420,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard different variations of how it refers to marijuana. What is
Yes.
your concept of how the 420 came into?
Oh, well, I've heard lots of different things. It's associated with the date. April 20th is supposed to be a national Get High Day. And they, it was an after school, it was rumored to be started by students, and so it was after school, so they all said, you know, let's do it at 420, on 420. Has anybody else got anything to add on that one?
Well, that's basically what I heard. I just want to see it because we live in school district.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate it. You know, hold all your questions till the end, because it might be covered in the presentation. Alrighty. Okay, so we were talking about how this these products use the concentrated marijuana oil. So we're going to look a little bit closer at marijuana concentrates. Okay. Tim, you want to go ahead and turn the lights off for this one, please? There won't be very many slides where we'll have the lights off, but the ones that have a lot of detail, I want you to get a good look at. Okay, so this is commonly called wax, or dab, or honey, or butter, B-U-D-D-E-R. Obviously because of its appearance. And then this is another one that's called shatter or crumble, and they're basically the same ingredients. They are made by using a chemical, commonly butane, to extract the THC from the marijuana plant, and then it's cooked down and commonly comes in these forms. This is another marijuana concentrate. This is going into, this is an oil, and you can put these into these e-pens. You can also smoke wax in e-pens. We'll take a look at this real quick here, though. So the DEA Administrator, Michelle Leonhardt, told the House that the use of wax was increasing throughout the U.S., and that in 2013, THC content of leaf marijuana was averaging about 14%, but the THC content of marijuana concentrates averaged about 54%, and some samples as high as 99% pure THC. Again, she talks about the butane gas used to extract and how that has resulted in home explosions, injuries, and deaths. And I read about how easily that does happen. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these e-pens or vapes. So in these, there's a button battery that heats the element that you put your oil or your shatter or your wax in, and vaporizes it. The user inhales the vapor, and when they exhale, the vapor that is exhaled dissipates quickly and often has little to no smell. So the marijuana concentrates and the edibles have been talked about a lot as difficult for the schools to discover that their youth are bringing marijuana to school, because now it's in forms that are harder to detect. This is another device for smoking the wax or the shatter. So what you're seeing here, this is called, referred to by users as an oil rig, and it has a metal bowl here, and he's using a butane torch to heat. They leave that torch on there for a very long time. It is like super heated. And then they'll take a tool called a nail. It just looks like it looks like a common nail. It has a little sharp point to get a dab of that substance, which is also how it got its nickname. touch it to the superheated bowl, and it vaporizes, in which they'll then inhale the vapors there. I have a video that I want to show you, and I want to describe it before I show it. So, so I was looking, back when I learned about this, there was an excellent video, and it really showed it. It was really shocking. Well, I couldn't find that video. I did come across something that I also wanted to show you. So, what you're going to see is somebody using common household items to smoke this this concentrated marijuana. And so let me go ahead and get the video queued up. He's using a water bottle. What you don't see is he's using a kitchen knife, and he's getting it hot. I can't tell if he's using a lighter or the stove to get it hot. It touches the concentrate. Okay, that's pretty much. That's it. Okay, so you may not see the fancy oil rigs or people who are trying to hide their use of this product may not want something so obvious sitting around. So that is basically how they ingest this. Okay, so now that we've looked at some forms of marijuana, let's talk about the health risks. Oh, thank you, Tammy. Okay, so marijuana smoke does irritate the lungs and increases the likelihood of other respiratory problems. There's exposure to carcinogens, those are cancer-causing agents, and other toxins. Marijuana contains 400 other chemical compounds. The chemical compounds are different from plant to plant. And the chemical compounds have different effects on the human body. And as we all know, different human bodies react differently to different chemicals. We don't react all the same way. So, marijuana has been associated with psychosis, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, personality disturbances. Remember a little earlier I said that the increase in the amount of THC intensifies the effects that we're seeing? So a recent study, as the THC potency of marijuana has increased, has also shown these effects to have increased. Little known fact is that marijuana increases your heart rate. A lot of people think of this drug as the mellow drug, but it does increase your heart rate 20 to 100% for up to 3 hours after smoking. It's been associated with heart arrhythmias, and in people who have heart problems, it's caused heart attacks. Okay, so now that we know the health risks, let's look at some risk factors for youth substance abuse. We know these to be true for youth, that the earlier they use, the more likely they are to become addicted. So it's before the age of 15, it increases the likelihood that they'll become addicted. If there is a family history of drug use or addiction, it increases the likelihood that they will use substances and become addicted. Now, you can't change your family history, but if you do have a family history, it kind of gives you the heads up that, you know, I need to warn my child. I need to be talking with them more about it. It doesn't mean for sure that your child is going to become a substance user or an addict. It just means that you've got that genetic factor and you need to work a little bit harder to prevent it. Okay, if they have family members or friends that currently use, that has been shown through research to increase their likelihood of using substances. Also, behavioral mental health problems. A child who has ADD or ADHD is more likely, according to research, to become a substance abuser. Problems in school learning disabilities. So if they have academic difficulties or social difficulties, if they have problems getting along with others, they are more likely to abuse substances. Families with high conflict, whether or not the children are directly involved in that conflict, maybe it's other members of the family, and families that have poor management, so little to no rules, poor communication, low monitoring skills, so those types of things lend to substance abuse. And then finally, if the youth have are not feeling very close or attached to their family, their community, or their school. An example of community is if they live in a neighborhood that has a lot of crime, and they just, they don't feel like they like the neighborhood they live in, and they're not connected to it. It could increase their chances. Same with school. If they don't, bond with some of their teachers, or they're not involved in those clubs or sports or activities, they may not feel like they're attached to their school, and that increases the risks. And that goes for any substance, not just marijuana. Okay. Some other factors associated with risk of marijuana is that 1 out of 11 adults who use it will get addicted. Now, when you talk about youth, that number almost doubles. So 1 out of 6 under the age of 15 who use will get addicted. And when they become daily users, that goes up from there. 25 to 50% of daily marijuana users will become addicted. Okay, marijuana has negative effects on attention, learning, and memory long after intoxication. We've got a slide coming up that is going to show that really clearly. This is true of of adults or youth. In youth, though, the effects can be permanent. Not so much with adults. Also associated with youth is that it has the potential to lower their IQ by 8 points. Now, 8 points may not seem very much, but if you're familiar with the IQ scale, that can put somebody in the average scale to the below average scale. So it is a big deal. Okay. So what we're looking at here is a good description of your endocannabinoid system. Let me explain. Okay, so in the mid-1960s, scientists identified that THC was marijuana's psychoactive ingredient. 20 years later, other scientists identified the sites in the brain and in the body where marijuana acts and called them your cannabinoid receptors. Okay, that's right there. After that, scientists also discovered that your body naturally produces 2 chemicals, anandamide and 2-AG, and they also act on those cannabinoid receptors. Okay, so the 2 chemicals your body makes and the cannabinoid receptors make up the endocannabinoid system. What do cannabinoids do? The ones that your body makes naturally. It's here. They regulate how fast or how slow messages are sent from neuron to neuron. So this right here is a neuron, and this right here is another neuron. There's like a gap in between. It's called a synapse. And these are chemicals that this neuron uses to send to this neuron. It receives them through these things called receptors. So again, the cannabinoids either speed up or slow down that chemical message between neurons. So your brain sends a message to your feet, let's walk. And your cannabinoids are released in relation to how fast that message needs to get to where it needs to go. Let's say you pick up something hot. Well, that message needs to get there really fast, so it increases the amount of cannabinoids released, thus increasing the speed of that message. Now, what happens when somebody ingests marijuana is that THC enters the system and also attaches to those cannabinoid receptors. It overwhelms the endocannabinoid system and confuses the message. Okay, so let's look at how that looks in your brain here. Okay, so your brain and your body, there's cannabinoid receptors all throughout your brain and your body, but your brain has the highest concentration of them. And specifically, these structures in the brain have the highest. So you've probably commonly heard that marijuana causes the munchies. And what that's doing is it's acting on, let's see, right there, the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus regulates eating, also regulates sexual behavior. And the result for most people is increased appetite. Another good example is driving a car. You've probably heard that people who are on marijuana and drive are pretty dangerous. And let's look at what's going on there. So there's a few things that would affect, basal ganglia, planning, starting a movement, results in slowed reaction time, would affect your brain stem, so sending the message from the brain to the spinal column. Let's see, there's a few more I saw here. Impaired coordination for your cerebellum and your neocortex. Driving definitely involves complex thinking, so it alters your thinking judgment. And then it also acts on the spinal cord. So, as you know, your brain sends messages through your body to the rest of your body through the spinal cord. Okay, let's look at another way that marijuana acts on the brain. Okay. Does that show up real well, or do you think we need the lights off on this one? Okay, let's go ahead and do the lights off. Okay, so what you're looking at is a SPECT scan, courtesy of the Amen Clinics. And what a SPECT scan is it measures the electrical activity, the messages that are being sent between the neurons in your brain. So this is a normal brain, and it's well lit up. So that means the electrical activity is full. Things are getting sent around the brain. Okay, that's your brain looking from the bottom, so that's your spinal cord. That's the front of the brain and the back. Again, you have the front, like your forehead, and then the back. And then they're again looking down from the top. There's the frontal cortex and the back. Okay, now let's look at a brain on marijuana. Okay, so what you're seeing is not actual holes like Swiss cheese. You can't, put your fingers through them. You're seeing areas in the brain that are not firing. The neurons are not sending that. The message is not getting through. Okay, so that's a pretty significant change from that one, especially that back end there. Let's get that one. Looking from the top down. Scary thing is that this is a 25-year-old daily marijuana smoker, so those effects are likely to be permanent. Any substance use in youth makes changes at a cellular level that can have lifelong consequences. The director of NIDA, Dr. Norabalco, says that regular marijuana use in adolescents is known to be part of a cluster of behaviors that can produce enduring, lifelong detrimental effects and alter the trajectory of a young person's life, totally change their path, thwarting his or her potential. Beyond potentially lowering their IQ, teen marijuana use is linked to school dropout, other drug use, and mental health problems, and others. Now, a little bit about Dr. Valco. She holds degrees in both medicine and psychiatry. She's a former professor of psychiatry and a former associate dean of medicine at the State University of New York, Stony Brook. So this is a person who knows her stuff. She knows what she's talking about. There's a lot of information out there right now about marijuana, and that you've got to look at who said it and what are their qualifications to say such a statement, to determine whether what you're hearing is true or not. Okay? Okay, so we've talked a lot about youth marijuana use. What might drive youth to use marijuana? Let's take a look at that. So what do you guys think? Why do you think youth use drugs and or marijuana? Yes?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure. What else?
Escape.
Sure. Escape from stress, escape from reality.
Experiment.
Boredom. Sure. Sure. Okay, so you guys named up quite a few on here. Some others that I want to talk about, the low perceived risk of harm. When youth think that it is not harmful or not risky to use a substance, that has been directly linked with the increase in use of that substance. Also, attitudes favorable to use. They're seeing a lot of it in media today. There's a lot of stars and celebrities out there today. It's all over the movies. A quick check on Google today popped up, Rihanna is talking all about it, and Miley Cyrus is very open about it, as are a bunch of other celebrities. So our youth are hearing a lot about it, and they're hearing the message that it's not harmful, and that, that a lot of people are doing it. So drugfreeazkids.org put out an article on February 4th of 2015. So in that article, it stated that the 2014 Monitoring the Future survey states that youth attitudes are continuing to change regarding the perception of marijuana's risk. So only 36.1% of 12th graders said that regular marijuana smoking puts the user at great risk, compared to 5 years ago, 52.4% said it. So again, research shows that the less risky a child believes a drug is, and the more society shows approval, the more likely the child is to use it. A statistician at the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission took the results of several of these surveys and came out with a good estimate that in Arizona, an additional 32,000 youth said they would start using marijuana if it became legal. Now, so far the states that have legalized marijuana have only legalized it for those 21 and older. But the youth are saying if it becomes legal, we're more likely to use it. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the top 5 drugs that are used in Casa Grande youth. Okay, first of all, I want to ask, what do you guys think are the top 5? Spice marijuana, heroin, meth, okay. Prescription drugs, alcohol. All right, so somebody said alcohol. Alcohol is number 1 among youth. So percentage of kids in Casa Grande that say that they used it in the last 30 days from the survey, Between 0 and 100%. What do you think is the percentage of kids that said they used it? 60? Any other guesses?
80.
80? Okay. Survey says 22%. So that does sound a lot lower than what we expected. But if you look at that statistic, that's still 1 out of 5 youth. Okay, a little bit more than 1 out of 5. And knowing now the effects of substances on the youth brain, 1 out of 5 to me is still a really bad statistic. Okay, so what do you suppose is the second most popular drug among youth in Casa Grande? Prescription drugs?
Marijuana.
Oh, there's marijuana. Okay, and what do you think is the percentage of youth used in the last 30 days?
70.
70? 50? 50, what did you say? 30? Okay. I hear I'm starting to go down. And it's
Wow.
It's 12%. Yes. Yes. I think our perception is a little bit different, but however, that's still a little more than 1 in 10. Okay. Again, knowing the effects is still an area of great concern because of the potential to change that child's life forever. Okay, so let's go look at the other ones. Next is cigarettes. Now, in the history of taking the Arizona Youth Survey in Casa Grande, this is the first time that marijuana use has surpassed the use of cigarettes. Okay. So cigarettes, 8.8%. So far, you'll see on these that we're lower than the state average. Okay. Next would be prescription drugs. On that one, we're just a little bit higher than the state average. We've made a good dent, but there's still a lot of, we still got a long way to go. Okay, and then chewing tobacco. Last year we saw an uptick. We're looking at that a little more closely to find out if it was just in those, because we've not seen an uptick in that. So we're looking at that one a little bit closely. That's not really a trend that we usually see. So, okay. So now that we know a little bit about youth substance use, let's talk about how to prevent it. Okay. So one of the most effective prevention methods is kids who have conversations with their parents and learn about the dangers of drug and alcohol use from them are 50% less likely to use than those who don't have those conversations. That's a pretty good tool there, just having conversations. Now, here in Casa Grande, only 44% of youth report having these conversations with their parents. So that's definitely a statistic that something can be done about. How do we do something about that? Well, it starts right here in this room. Now that you guys have this information, you need to go and talk with other parents, other adults. Let's get this word out. The more conversations we have with our kids about the dangers of drug use, the use goes down. It prevents the use. Okay, so when should you start having conversations about the dangers of drugs and underage drinking? When do you think is the appropriate time to start having these conversations? Yes?
Well, me and my brother, we did this thing with the MASH commission which we were part of, and we went to the elementary school to speak about it. So I figured we should start really early, about first grade up then.
About first grade? We have a philosophy, or I have a philosophy that it's never too early. Even from the time that they're real itty bitty, 4 and 5, they can understand. My family does not do drugs. We make it a rule in my family. We do not do drugs. Drugs can hurt me. Okay. Going to the science, the average age that youth start using any substance, who wants to guess what that is? And this is a Casa Grande statistic. So.
9?
9,
13.
13. Okay. 12.7. So about 3 months, or yeah, a little bit. Sorry, a little bit past the halfway point after their 12th birthday. So the science does say that before that time, we need to be, actively having these conversations, preparing our youth for the world that they're about to is about to come at them. Never too early to start having these conversations. Marijuana use in Casa Grande, the first age is an average of 13.2 years. Again, those are averages, so that takes the low and the high and combines them and comes to the middle. Okay. So some of you may be saying, really? Does this work? Having a conversation? Okay, well, again, survey says 50% of the youth in Casa Grande say that parent disapproval is a reason they don't use substances. Okay? And it's not just the parents they're listening to. 36% said that it was other adults disapproving that caused them to not use substances. So anyone who's significant in the life of a youth can affect them. That's their grandparents, their teachers, their coaches, their aunts, their uncles. That's encouraging stuff. Okay, so we talked about having conversations. Another thing that we need to do is keep open communication with our youth so that they do feel good coming to us and talking with us. That first one, I said work to keep lines of communication open, and sometimes it does feel like work. I guarantee that the more you do it, the less it's going to feel like work. It's just going to become ingrained. So what I mean when I say that is, let's pretend that your little Susie comes to you and says, some kids I know at school got busted with drugs today. As a parent, it's probably easy to react and think, oh my gosh, I wonder if Susie's, involved and she doesn't want to tell me. And but resist the urge to jump to conclusions and start that lecturing, because that closes that communication off. Okay, Susie's probably, if that's how you react, Susie's probably not going to come to you and start continue to tell you things that are coming up in her life. So instead, ask questions like, what happened? Tell me about it. How do you know these kids? Ask Susie about, what are her feelings about it? Youth respond very well when we appeal to their independence and their power. They have an opinion. They have a voice. This would be a good time to remind them that the rules in your home are no drugs or underage drinking. Go ahead and ask them, what do you think the possible consequences to these kids are going to be? And, be sure to touch on the natural consequences as well as the imposed consequences. Ask them if they'd like to practice peer pressure resistance skills so that they know what to do if they're ever faced with that situation. Okay. Respect their need for, their growing need for power and independence while you're still guiding them and letting them know that you love them and you're there for them. Okay. So when you're keeping those lines of communication open, you can be casually asking them about things that are happening at school, with their friends, about their plans for their future. And the reason asking them about their plans for the future is a good tool is because they're, the frontal lobe of your brain is the part of your brain that's responsible for decision making, good judgment, cause and effect, self-control, and a lot of other functions. How do you think you are when your frontal lobe is fully developed and able to do those things really well?
22.
What's that?
22.
23?
30.
Anybody else?
30.
Well, right here I'm hearing a good average. It's not till between the ages of 25 and 30 on average. That makes sense. That makes sense in our world. So When you're asking them about plans for their future, you're setting them up for thinking through, what do I need to do to get to where I want to be? A lot of them will say, oh, if I want to be, a policeman, I've got to stay away from drugs and alcohol and not get in trouble with the law. So you're helping them to think through that cause and effect until they're able to think through those things for themselves. Okay, listening is a key to communication. So some ways to let them know you're listening is just every now and then, repeat back what you heard them say, maybe not word for word. You can say, oh, it sounds like you're feeling, like to Susie, you'd say, oh, it sounds like you're feeling, kind of confused about what you heard. That lets them know that you're listening. Also is a good tool for getting them to open up and say more. Now, anybody who has worked with teens or has teens knows that it's sometimes hard to get teens to open up and talk. As they grow up, they want more of their personal space, and it's not a good idea to force those conversations. That has the opposite effect. So, what are some good times to talk with youth? When do you have them as a captive audience? What do you guys think? At dinner time, that's a great time.
Well, I was going to say, if you're homeschooling, it makes perfect time because you are available.
Definitely.
In the car?
In the car, that's a very good one. They're your captive audience, although a lot of them tend to put the earbuds in. Some other good time, like create a time when you're cooking dinner or getting dinner ready to get out on the table. Invite them to come and set the table. Not only does that give you an opportunity to have them as a captive audience, but it helps them to feel a part of the family, attached to the family, which we saw earlier, reduces their risk for substance abuse. They feel like they're contributing to the good of the family and that they belong. Okay. Another good prevention tool is proper monitoring. So it's the old who, what, where, and when. What we mean by that is ask who they're going to be with, what they're going to be doing. So they said, okay, well, I'm going to be with, with Johnny. Well, what are you guys going to be doing? Oh, we're going to be playing a video game. Well, where are you going to be? We're going to Johnny's house, and maybe we'll go down to the convenience store when we're done. Okay, well, that should take just a few hours. When are you going to be home? And then, of course, you have a little control over that one. Every now and then, check up on them. Make sure they're where they say they're going to be and, that they're doing what they said they're going to be doing. If they are, then you can give them a little bit, more freedom. And if they're not, then it's consequence time. You hate when we say this. Don't feel guilty. Parents and other adults don't feel guilty to go through youth rooms, their personal space, if they're old enough to drive, their cars, their backpacks, their purses, their personal belongings. You're not doing it for the wrong reasons. It's because you care and you want to keep them safe. Make sure you're monitoring their online activities. If they've got a Facebook or an Instagram, make sure that you're their friend, you're following them. That way you can see what they're posting and what their friends are posting. You want to keep an idea of what they're doing. Okay, and some other helpful tools is to help your child identify ways to deal with stress. What are some good ways to deal with stress other than you turning to substance use?
Exercise?
Definitely. Exercise is one of the best ways because your body releases chemicals naturally when you exercise that combat stress. Good one. What does anybody else here do to deal with stress? Yes?
Resting.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yes. Some other good ones we've heard, count to 10. Believe it or not, just taking a second totally changes the outlook on things. Some youth like to listen to music, do art or journaling. Be sure to set rules in your family, especially rules about underage drinking and drug use. Let your family know that that is unacceptable. When I say take advantage of teachable moments, so maybe there's a story on the news about drugs or underage drinking, and that would be a good opportunity, or a show they're watching, or one of their favorite stars ends up in the news because of drugs and alcohol. Anything that you could use as a teachable moment. Rescue plan. So what we mean when we say that is a friend of ours made a rescue plan with her son, and if he found himself in a place that he knew he wanted to get out of, it was maybe there was drugs or kids drinking, and he would call his mom up and say, "Oh, Mom, I forgot to feed the dog," and she would say back to him, "That is your only chore. I am so disappointed that you're not responsible for your only chore. I'm coming to get you right now." And so, thank you. And he would be able to save face and get out of that risky situation. And so it's always good to come up with some kind of rescue plan. Let your kids be able to contact you without losing their cool with the peers there. And lastly, be their parent, not their friend. They're going to have a ton of friends throughout their life. They're only going to have you as their parents. Okay, so we've talked a lot about preventing use, but what if you suspect your child is using marijuana? Okay, so these test kits are available at local drugstores. I looked, and here in Casa Grande, they range from $18 to $36. Some test for a single substance, others test for a few, and then there's others that test for a great range. The Dollar Tree here in Casa Grande has these at-home marijuana test kits, and we wondered, are they accurate? Can we trust them? So at the Casa Grande Alliance, we got a few of them and sent them down to a local treatment agency, and they field tested them for us, and they were found to be accurate. So for $1, you test for marijuana at the Dollar Tree. We'll get those at the Dollar Tree. So drug test kits also work as a prevention tool. If you test your children and do it at random times, they know that they can't use because they're going to be tested. They can also use that to resist peer pressure, because if their friends say, "Oh, just come on, do it," they say, "No way, man, my parents drug test me. I'm not going to do that." But that only works if the parents follow through and set consequences if that test does come up to be positive. So some other signs to look for if you're wondering if your child uses marijuana. These are common signs. Not everybody exhibits them, but the red bloodshot eyes, increased appetite. Some people, act lethargic and sleepy. Their coordination is off, and of course the increased heart rate, like we talked about before. Some other things to watch for. Now, youth in the teen years tend to be just a little bit more, off to themselves, but we're talking really withdrawn, like aggressively secretive, telling you, "No, I'm not, get out of my room." Well, that's an indication that something, you might want to look. Apathy or lack of feelings, lack of interests that they were, previously really interested in, where their grades are dropping, having problems in class. Regardless of the reason for that, that's definitely the indication that something's going on. We need to look into that further. It may be substance use, or it may be something else. If they seem confused, have a lack of focus, if they're misjudging time, and that wasn't something that was previously a problem for them. This indicator could be marijuana. Some people get giggly or talkative. when using marijuana. If you see these following items, they might indicate marijuana use, so eye drops, incense, or other room deodorizers to cover that smell, lighters or matches, rolling papers, empty bags, burnt tin foil. Some items promoting the use of marijuana. There's pot leaf jewelry or clothing that depicts either the pot leaf or things associated with it. Rastafarian culture items, which I'll have a slide that shows an example of that. If you're seeing these things on posters in their room or on their social media sites, some celebrities associated with marijuana are, of course, Bob Marley is a classic, and Cheech and Chong, classically associated with marijuana use, and more recently Snoop Dogg. And there's some other current actors and actresses and celebrities out there that are associated, but those are the ones we're commonly seeing on these marijuana promotional items. These are some other things to look for. Over here, these are some homemade things they can use to smoke marijuana. So they've created a pipe out of just an empty can. And here, this person created a bong out of a water bottle and an empty pen canister here. This is the example of a Rastafarian item. Now, they don't always depict Bob Marley, but they typically have the green, yellow, red in that pattern. There again is that 420. Empty containers, open them, smell them. You smell what pot smells like. And then these are some hiding containers available very widely. So if you see something in their room, it may not immediately trigger you, but now that you know, just kind of pick it up, shake it, see if it opens the way it's supposed to. Your child may just not be good at picking up after himself, but then again, you want to know for sure. Okay, some other things to watch for. We talked earlier about the vaporizers, the e-pens and that. Well, these are some other vaporizers that are very disguised. So one that looks just like an inhaler. But to me, that kind of looks like a radio. Radio Shack used to put out a product, a radio that looks similar to that, but that's actually a vaporizer. If you saw this in your child's backpack, you might think it's a pen, but actually it contains this vaporizer here. And while some of these have those telltale signs, the Bob Marley, the Cheech and Chong, this one in particular, that's where the vapor comes out. If they had that turned around to the back, they have that on their shelf, I would never question it until I saw this slide. I was also told that if there's an eyeglass case, be sure to open it. Things where they may conceal things. Okay. So now, if you find out that your child is using marijuana, what should you do? Don't panic, remain calm, but you do need to act, and the quicker the better. Gather your facts, plan an intervention. If you need help planning an intervention, there's information on our website that helps people to do that. Definitely seek outside and professional help for your youth and yourself. Addiction is a disease, and you would seek medical attention in any other disease that you would have. You typically want to seek medical attention, and addiction is no different. Substance abuse can lead to addiction, and it's a preventable and treatable disease. Of course, if you do find out your child is using marijuana, you want to monitor their activities much more closely than before. So, are people really entering treatment for marijuana? Yes, they are. In 2008, admissions for marijuana treatment accounted for 17% of all admissions to treatment facilities in the United States. That's roughly 1 out of 5. And more teens enter treatment for primary diagnosis of marijuana dependence than all other illicit drugs combined. Okay, so now we're going to go to some myths and facts. This is a kind of a fun one. I'm going to throw a fun one at you. So in Colorado, there are more marijuana dispensaries than Starbucks coffee shops. Is that a myth or a fact? What do you think? Fact? You're right. As a matter of fact, I checked, and currently this is still true. I could not get exact numbers like they did here in 2010, but in 2010, there were 390 medical marijuana dispensaries in Denver and only 208 Starbucks. So almost twice as many dispensaries. Okay, next one. Marijuana will be out of the user's system in a few days or weeks. What do you think? Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of people saying that's a myth. It is a myth. Okay, so the truth is, it can depend on the amount or the potency of the marijuana ingested. It can be detected for weeks, sometimes months. It depends also on the method used to test it. Urine tests are much shorter duration than hair follicle tests, so it depends on the method for testing too. The THC in marijuana is absorbed by the fatty tissues in various organs in your body, so the more fatty tissue you have, the longer the marijuana can stay in your system. So for everybody, it is different. Okay. Medical grade marijuana is different from illegal marijuana. What do you think? Fact? Myth. Okay, I didn't make this up.
So what do you mean by illegal marijuana?
Well,
Marijuana brought in by cartels from Mexico?
marijuana, marijuana used for recreational use, non-medical use, would be illegal marijuana. There is no difference between the two. There is no such thing as medical grade marijuana. The marijuana sold as medicine in dispensaries is the same as marijuana sold on the streets and carries the same health risks. Okay. Marijuana has been approved for use as a medicine.
True. I think like in cancer patients,
There's never been a scientific test.
I'm hearing both sides of the fence. Let's find out. Myth. Why is it a myth? The Food and Drug Administration has not approved marijuana as a medicine. So in order for the Food and Drug Administration to approve it, it would have to have well-defined. Remember that marijuana has over 400 chemicals and that not each plant has the same chemicals as another plant, so it can't be well-defined. Measurable ingredients. The THC content in marijuana varies from plant to plant. Even if you have the same kind of marijuana plant, the next one could grow a little differently and have different amounts of THC. So one dose of a medicine has to have the exact same ingredients and the exact same strength as the next dose. Another thing that gets FDA approval is if it's proven to be safe. We've already looked at some of the health risks associated with marijuana. And then another thing they look at is that the likely benefits outweigh any possible harmful effects. We've all seen the commercials on TV. You know, they talk about all the good stuff, and then there's a long list of potential harmful side effects. But they've determined that those benefits outweigh the risks in most people. So marijuana has not passed this FDA approval as a medicine. Okay. All right. At this point, I'm gonna open it up for questions. I'm gonna first say that our staff collectively has done a lot of research on this topic. If we don't know the answer though, we will definitely do our best to find out and get back to you. So, does anyone have questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, you did the survey here in Casa Grande.
Mhm.
Who conducted that survey? Where did you go to?
Okay, and we didn't conduct it. And I'm gonna call on our executive director because I don't know as much about it as you do.
Okay, so there's the Arizona Youth Survey happens every 2 years. It's a biannual survey, and a group outside of our community from Utah actually create the survey, and then the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission evaluates the survey. So it's not done here in like our office like we do with other surveys. So the kids get about 140 questions on the survey every 2 years, and it's 8th, 10th, and 12th graders that are surveyed in all of the schools in the district, and they answer questions ranging from substance use to do they feel safe at school, have they ever carried a handgun. So it's a whole wide range of various questions that they answer, and then that gets sent back to a group called Bach Harrison. They're out of Utah, and they analyze all of that data, and it gets sent back to us, and we use that data for our numbers. So a lot of people say that those numbers aren't accurate, we don't believe it, but if you look at our community data, which is the Casa Grande data, compared to the county data, compared to the state data, compared to the national data, they're all within the same range. There's some areas that might have a higher rate of alcohol use than we do here, but that's all based on community. So we have a group, such as the Casa Grande Alliance, that has been working in this community for the past 25 years to reduce substance use. Another community might not have a group like that, so their youth substance use rates might be higher than what we have here, and it's different depending on the community. But it's done every 2 years, and it's been implemented for the past 10 or 12 years here in Casa Grande. And over time, we've seen different substance trends. So spice, the drug spice, came out about 2012. And so before they weren't tracking that data on this Arizona Youth Survey, but as of 2012, they started tracking, what percent of youth are using spice. And so now we have data based on that. So over time, currently we track 18 substances on that survey, but over time substances have been added to that survey because new trends come up like meth. Remember the meth epidemic that happened? We didn't start tracking that data until about 2006. Does it answer your question?
Partly, mostly. I guess basically what I want to know is, do you go specifically to the high schools? Like, would you go to Union? Would you go to this school, or which school do you go to?
So
you just find student or kids on the street, or?
No, they're implemented in the schools. So the school superintendents are aware, and the principals. The teachers administer the test. There's an administration toolkit that tells them how to administer it and how long the kids get. And so Union, Vista, and all three of the middle schools in the elementary district participated this year. They surveyed over 1,900 students.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Right there.
Okay. That was my long answer for your short question.
And actually, I want to add to that because I've had a lot of teens, including my own, challenge me on, Mom, they don't answer those questions honestly. Come on. And what I found out was, okay, so Brianna mentioned that our local statistics, so the Casa Grande statistics, fall within the same range as the Pinal County, which falls within the same range as Arizona, which falls within the same range as national. So what that means is, say for alcohol, we were 22%. Pinal County was probably somewhere around the same. Arizona, you saw, was similar. Nationally, pretty similar. For kids to be able to throw those numbers, they would have to call every kid in the nation and say, answer number 3 this way. Not happening. They're actually answering honestly. That's how we fit it, That's how that goes down.
And they do have questions embedded in the survey that can determine if a kid is lying on the test or not. And so those that they determine are lying get thrown out. And there are various tests. This isn't the only test. There's the Youth Behavior Risk. It's called the YBRS, Youth Behavior Risk Survey. That's a national survey. There's Monitoring the Future survey. That's also a national survey. So they're implemented by different organizations and they all collect similar data. Stephanie showed you guys the past 30-day use of youth. That means in the last 30 days, how many times have you used marijuana? And it gives a scale and the kids get to mark the boxes. And then there's also, they track lifetime use. So over your lifetime, say a kid is 16, from birth to 16, how many times have you tried marijuana in your lifetime? So although they may have tried it when they were 13, they no longer use now because they didn't like the effects when they were 13, so they decided they're never going to use again. And so it doesn't capture them in that 30-day use. The 30-day uses are chronic kids, the kids that we need to keep an eye on. These are the kids that are using every weekend. These are the kids that are throwing the parties. These are the kids that are supplying other kids with drugs and alcohol. These are the ones that we want to keep our eye on, not the ones that maybe tried it once and they never use again. So there is a difference between lifetime use numbers and past 30-day use numbers. And all that information is on the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission website. We also have those numbers in-house if you're interested in looking at those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
How many of the young people and maybe older people realize that any use of marijuana is a federal offense in the United States? The executive branch has decided not to enforce it in certain cases and let it become more pervasive. And it almost seems like hoping it will become acceptable by doing that. But anybody that uses it or sells it or grows it at some point could be guilty if it was federally enforced, and a change in administration or anything like that could change that very quickly. So
Definitely. I think what we're seeing today definitely confuses both the youth and the adults on that issue. So that was a good point. Any other questions? Do we have any questions from our online viewers? Okay. Okay.
Good job.
All right, well, if you come up with any before the end of the, we still have a few things that we're going to do. We're going to give you a survey so you can tell us how we did, how well we were able to educate you today, and we've got certificates for you to account for your training, and then we've got some take-home materials. They will cover a lot of the topics that were discussed here today, a lot of the information I took straight from these materials and the internet. So, and then also if you want to review the presentation, it'll be available on our website. I think I said that at the beginning, but okay, so let's go ahead and get the survey. All right.